every single night before I went to bed, I would see myself in the water, on the bike, running through that finish line. And I always tell the story. There was a moment I was at the Y in East Hampton. And if anybody was there that day, they would have thought I was nuts because I was doing a run, which was huge for me. The run was always my hardest. And I decided to do a cool down, and I just held on and put it really low. And I closed my eyes, and I did a whole visualization as I was walking slowly of the race. And as I did it, I felt every sensation. And by the time I got to the end, I could see it and feel it. It was that moment of crossing the finish line, and I literally had tears streaming down my face. And I knew without a doubt. I was like, there's no way I won't cross that finish line. Right. Because I had been able to go there in my mind. Mm-hmm. I would without a doubt go there in my body. End of the day, I do this whole pink bubble thing with them, and we stay, safe in our bubbles and all of that. And it's
that mindset, right?
Exactly.
It's that
I am safe.
I am safe. Right, because that's where it starts. Because if you feel safe, then the chances are you're going to be safe,
yes.
right?
Yep.
And what's really interesting is I'm thinking about, the bicyclists out here. Overall, the cyclists out here know which direction to go in. But I'm thinking about they know that they have to go with traffic, and then the people that are walking should be going against traffic, and I just don't.
They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know.
I see people walk, and there's been accidents.
Have you seen our signs though? We have a couple in Springs.
Oh, okay.
But we now the Shinnecock Nation with the billboards coming in and out. They, for the last 3 years, we have billboards that have road safety, and it's pictures of the girls, and one is on the bike, and it says "Ride with traffic," and then run and walk again. Yes.
Thank you, Theresa. Because people
don't know. It makes me crazy. And then if I stop somebody, I feel like a Karen.
Yes.
But I had some guy yell at me, and I'm like, he goes, "You're wrong." He was running with headphones with traffic. And I was like, tried to explain he yelled at me, and he's like, "You're wrong." I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you, but guess what? You get hit, insurance isn't going to cover you because you're breaking the law right now.
Oh,
You have
true?
Yeah, it happened to a friend of mine.
It happened to a mother with a child, actually, in Amagansett a couple years back. And she was walking home from school with her kids, and she was hit by a car. Again, I don't know, distracted driver or not. Right. I don't know what the outcome was.
Yeah, you have to be able to see what's coming.
Yes, please learn. People in the Hamptons, please learn how to walk, especially with the traffic and the season. When you're walking or running, you should be against traffic. So thank you for putting up those signs, Miss Theresa.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. It's one of my pet peeves.
Oh, me too.
Because it's just such a simple thing, and I don't think people are paying attention. And if you're not paying attention and the drivers are not paying attention, that's when the problems start.
It's not about the competition. It's we as a society need to move from lack mindset to abundance, right? There is more than enough. And I just feel so firmly, I've said it since the beginning. I'm going to cry. These kids are different. They've come at a time in this world where we need them, and it's hard right now. We all know this is not. I'm praying this is the last gasp, because what's coming after us, they're strong. They're confident. They look at the past, things like Rosa Parks at the back of the bus saying, "What? Gay marriage? What?"
Right.
It just doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So we need to just support and love them and reaffirm you're right, and hold the door for them, because they get it. Right. They get it. They're gonna, I always say, I'm not worried about our future because I see it. I see who you are in your hearts and your souls, and go do that.
Well, they are. They're far more advanced, right? I say
Indeed.
from 2000, around the 2000,
yes.
right?
Yep.
2000 babies onward, and I just think that there's an intuitive knowing, there's a common sense, well, not always, but they have to figure that out. But there is this and belief of what is what they're capable of,
Yes.
and what, as long as you don't block them, as long as you don't hinder that, as
Right.
long as you don't squash that,
Yeah.
I feel that they are such a gift to us, and they're teaching us so much if we allow it.
Exactly. In this particular story, one of the little souls, God asked him, what do you want to go down to earth to learn? And he chooses forgiveness. And God says, well, who are you going to forgive? Look around. And he looks, and it's all these beautiful souls, the light. Each one of them is a light. And the little soul gets upset, and he's like, oh, man. And this other soul steps forward and says, don't worry, I'll help you. And he says, well, how are you going to help me? And he says, well, when we go to earth, I'm going to make my light very dim, and I'm going to do something that you're going to have to forgive. And man, does that change my whole outlook on everything, right? That person who hurt you, maybe they were hurting you so that you would have the opportunity to forgive.
Right.
Which,
Learn that lesson, so it's really a blessing.
absolutely.
Right.
Welcome to POV Hamptons, where real conversations meet soulful perspectives. I'm Anastasia Gavalis, your host, inviting you into the lives of visionaries, change makers, and creatives shaping the East End. This isn't just any podcast. It's a movement with real people, unfiltered stories, authentic voices, and elevated insights. We shine a light on the individuals making waves in our community. We explore the ideas shaping the Hamptons and the moments that carry life's deepest lessons. From inspiring journeys to transformative conversations, this show reveals the true heartbeat of this iconic destination. One high-vibing episode at a time. So settle in. You're about to discover what makes this place truly extraordinary. Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode of POV Hamptons. Today, I have the founder of iTry with me, Theresa Rodin. I'm going to read a little intro. In 2005, Theresa Rodin, a 34-year-old self-proclaimed non-athlete, crossed the finish line of Block Island Triathlon and discovered the transformative power of triathlon. 5 years and 15 races later, as her daughter entered middle school, she asked herself, what if all middle school girls could experience the same sense of strength, confidence, and purpose? Determined to make that vision real, she launched iTry in 2010 with just 10 girls at Spring School in East Hampton, New York. Through a powerful blend of physical training, visualization, self-love, nutrition, and mentorship, iTry helps girls realize they can do anything. Today, iTry has empowered over 1,400 girls from 13 Long Island school districts, and under Theresa's continued leadership, is preparing for national expansion. Theresa, iTry's visionary founder, is here with us today, and she's been featured on the Today Show and the Kelly Clarkson Show, which I happened to see yesterday, actually. I was looking to do some research for this podcast, this episode, and I saw that you were on with Michael Bolton, who, you know, Soul Provider was my wedding song. So I love it.
Really?
Yeah. And I saw him so many times at Jones Beach. And it was great.
He's so nice. He's so kind.
That was a couple of years ago?
Yeah, definitely two or 3 years ago now. Crazy.
Yeah. So it was really fun to see that. I thought, yep, there's that synchronicity there. Okay.
Crazy.
So I usually start off every episode asking what brought you here to the Hamptons. So can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I grew up in the Hudson Valley. My dad worked at West Point. And even though it's beautiful there, I just never felt attached there. So when I went to college, I came home for the first summer and lived at home, and it was miserable. The second year I was at college, some of my high school friends called and said, hey, you want to go get jobs in the Hamptons this summer? And I said, yes. What's the Hamptons? I never heard of it. I just knew I didn't want to be home anymore. And so over spring break of our sophomore year, 4 of us drove out. And back then, so it must have been, 89 maybe, we drove out. We had interviews set for a hotel on the stretch in Amagansett, and we drove out, and it was back in the day where everybody said they rolled up the sidewalks. There was nobody out here. I think we had lunch at Candy Kitchen, and the directions, pre-GPS was like, stay right at the windmill. I'm like, who has windmills? This was insane to me, right? So we drove out, and we get there, and it was the Seacrest, which is a hotel right on the stretch that's still there to this day, and we pulled in. And you can't see the ocean from the parking lot. So before we went in for our interviews, we climbed up the dune. And the four of us stood shoulder to shoulder looking out at the most incredible ocean. And I just had this knowing that I was home. This is where I was going to live for the rest of my life. Wow. And so I kept coming back summer after summer. The next year we went to Gurney's, and we got staff housing at Gurney's, and had an
upgrade.
Oh, such an upgrade. Ocean view and the whole thing. And it was just, I just knew I was home.
Wow. So you chose the Hamptons, but really the Hamptons chose you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I still pinch myself all the time. Yeah. Like I feel like, boop, this is where I landed. And, it's living here. It's so incredible. It's the people are amazing. The spiritual energy of the place is just magnificent. And, it doesn't matter. I don't have a house on the ocean, but I still can go there every single day, year round, and enjoy it just like anybody else.
Right. So at the core, it's sort of, at the core, we're all searching for something. And obviously you found that at a young age. What do you think that was that you were looking for and that you found when you walked up that dune?
Well, I was so naive. I was like, okay, I'm going to live here. Like that, I didn't realize that people had to work and strive their whole life to be. I was like, this is where I'm going to live, and it worked out for me.
So you ended up working the summer, still going to college.
Yeah, and once I graduated, I was an education major, so I was hired right here in Bridgehampton at the Hampton Day School at the time, and I taught preschool for a few years and then kindergarten before I ended up, having my own child and stopped teaching for a while.
Stopped teaching, and then?
The other magical part is that I met my husband. And so I was 24 when I met him, so pretty young, had just gotten the job in Bridgehampton as a teacher, and he was working at Dance Papers and was worked with a friend of mine who we were roommates, one of the four girls. And
so you were still friends with those four girls?
Yes. Yeah. It went from four, then the next year it was three, then it was two, and then finally Lori, her name is, decided to follow a guy and go move to Colorado. So then it was just me, but I was like, I'm not leaving. I love it here. And so unbeknownst to me, his name is Rob, and worked at Dan's with her, and I didn't realize it, but he must have had a mad crush on me. And so he said to her before she was moving, "Hey, listen, I want to take you out to dinner before you go to Bobby Van's, and bring your friend Theresa."
As one does, yes.
And I almost didn't go because I was dating somebody else. I had just gotten an apartment in Montauk. I was like all cool by myself, and the guy canceled on me. And Lori's like, come on, it's a free dinner. We're 24 years old. Yeah, it was so crazy.
Interesting, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we went to dinner, and man, he made me laugh like nobody's ever made me laugh before. And I swear, and she backs me up, he got up to go to the bathroom, and I looked at her and I said, "Lori, you're going to think I'm crazy. I love him, and I'm going to marry him." And literally, we started dating right away. He had a apartment right at Long Beach, so it had a water view of Long Beach. I thought he was rich. He wasn't rich. He just had this great apartment, and it's so funny because the way the world works, that's where our race is now. And so when I'm there, it's like we started our lives together right here, and it was pretty magical. It just clicked, and we had our daughter Abby, and we had a boating and yachting magazine. So we would we rented our house in East Hampton, and we would live on our boat and go over to Block Island for the summer. That's kind of it all. I always say, everything that I experienced led me to the moment of coming up with the idea for iTry and all the things that have happened since. Right? If I had been an athlete, none of this would have made so much difference, right? If I had had a great adolescence and middle school was great for me, I wouldn't have done this. But, like all the pieces kind of fell into place. And so it brings me to where I am today.
Well, can you tell us, since we're at that point, I definitely want to talk more about your personal journey and what you learned, but let's talk about that. So you went to Block Island, and this is a story. I mean, I just know it from what I've heard. So you share the story about you went to Block Island. You weren't necessarily a runner.
Not at all. I had never even done a 5K. I was, growing up, I loved to ride my bike. I was a fish in the water. I loved to swim, but I never thought of those things as being athletic, right? I thought to be an athlete, you had to be on a team and you had to be up at bat. And God, that terrified me. It was none of that. So we were standing on the beach. We were sitting on the beach in Block Island where all of a sudden these lunatics came running down and they had numbers written on their arm in Sharpie and they were jumping over the sandcastles and we are all standing up and cheering. And I look at my friend, I'm like, what is this? He goes, it's the Block Island Triathlon. Like, they do this every year. I'd never seen it. So we talked about it and I didn't even tell anybody, but in my heart and my soul, I was like, I'm going to do this next year, which was a crazy idea. So I came home after that summer and I was in a book club with, other moms that I knew. And I said, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to do the Block Island Triathlon next year. And a couple of them said, that's a great, why don't we do that together? I need a goal. Now, these are all people like, I haven't done anything since the New York City Marathon. And, so it was a whole different level. But it was really incredible because even though they were all, fitter than I and more athletic than I, triathlon is such an individualized thing that what I found was you're really only competing against yourself and improving every single day. And so we literally had to Google at the time how to train for a triathlon. We knew nothing. We signed up, we did it. We literally just jumped into the pool at the Y, having no idea what we were doing and, gasping through that first lap saying, how am I ever going to do this? But each time we did it, we got a little stronger and a little more confident. And for me, always, my go-to was always, I can't do that. I didn't want to put myself out there. The negative self-talk was just atrocious, as I think many women. And
I mean, I don't know anyone else who talks to us, who we allow to talk to us as negative as we do ourselves.
Yeah. And so what I quickly figured out was that I was never going to reach that goal. I was never going to cross that finish line if I continuously beat myself up every single day. So at the same time that I was training my body, I was also really training my mind and my spirit. So instead of, you're too fat, you're too slow, you're never going to do this, I had to come up with new thought patterns and new affirmations, right? You're getting stronger. Wow, look what you just did. You're faster than you were yesterday. You're going to do it. I can see it. I'm strong. Just keep going, whatever it is, right? And that became my mantra. It was the same time period. I don't know if you have ever watched the movie The Secret. Right? But it was kind of that perfect timing, right? And the visualization, which it seemed woo-woo at the time. Yeah. And now we teach it to the girls. Yeah. It's visual rehearsal. It's what the astronauts do. It's what, so.
Every athlete does,
absolutely.
Every good athlete, every athlete.
Yep. And so I was doing that. Mm-hmm. I was every single night before I went to bed, I would see myself in the water, on the bike, running through that finish line. And I always tell the story. There was a moment I was at the Y in East Hampton. And if anybody was there that day, they would have thought I was nuts because I was doing a run, which was huge for me. The run was always my hardest. And I decided to do a cool down, and I just held on and put it really low. And I closed my eyes, and I did a whole visualization as I was walking slowly of the race. And as I did it, I felt every sensation. And by the time I got to the end, I could see it and feel it. It was that moment of crossing the finish line. And I literally had tears streaming down my face. And I knew without a doubt. I was like, there's no way I won't cross that finish line. Right. Because I had been able to go there in my mind. Mm-hmm. I would without a doubt go there in my body.
I love that.
Yeah, it was huge. So the race came and it was incredible. I mean, it was everything. I had the moment that I tell everybody if they ever do something like this, especially the girls, there's going to be a moment where you're like, oh my God, I'm really doing it. It's really here. it's, oh my God. So I had that moment, and as great as the finish line was, what I realized was it was the whole journey that had been transformative. And I became the Pied Piper. If you knew me then, you would be a triathlete now, because by the next year we took 25 people over and did every race out here. And, everybody I met, I'm like, look at me. If I can do this, you can do this. And it was so fun. We're just having so much fun. And then, the years went by. My daughter came to every race. My husband and my daughter watched, and, she would ride her bike with me and stuff. But I knew she was very much like me. She was never going to be a team sport. We tried everything, right? She had the roller hockey, the softball. No. But I knew she could do this. And so I was out for a run one day, and I was just thinking, gosh, if I had learned all of this at her age, instead of waiting until I was in my 30s, what a difference it would have made. And that's where the idea came from.
And so, I mean, just, as you're talking, I'm going, I could never do a triathlon. And I have 5 kids, and they are all athletic, and they're amazing, and they're just, they're great at what they do. And I just keep, and every time it's like, where do you get your, your physical stamina from? Like, me, not really, clearly it's really who they are, and they're just built that way, and their mindsets and everything. And you always think it's that other person that could do it, that has something special power, but really it's all in your mindset and what you're saying to yourself day in and day out. So that to me is so powerful. And I'm, it's funny because I heard of iTry years and years ago, and I started a nonprofit out here as well. And at one point, I think we were going to connect, but it wasn't until most recently that we saw each other at a women's circle.
Yeah.
And to me, when I see someone at that circle, obviously there is an understanding of that we are more than just our bodies, right? The body is a beautiful vessel, and we should take care of it and push it to the limits if you want, whatever. I mean, it's amazing what athletes do and what people do. But I love the fact that I saw you there, and then we connected at the end, and that you do understand the whole mind-body-spirit connection.
Yep.
Because I don't think iTry would be that. It would be an activity.
Yep.
And I don't know, again, I know girls that have gone through it, and I've spoken to people who have been there involved, but I don't know if it would make the impact it would make on these girls, on these human beings, on the people who watch the progress, the journey. I don't know if it would be the same if there wasn't that mind, body, spirit connection.
I agree. We always say we're not making triathletes.
Right.
We're making better humans. Right. Just and it took me a long time to really come to the courage and the awareness that really what I try, if you boil it all down, it's about love, and it's about self-love. And that's it. Right. And that's what we get. I think the greatest comment we ever had from one of our alums was, she said, everybody always tells you have to love yourself, but it wasn't until iTry that somebody actually showed me how. And that huge, right? And that's what I mean. If you can get that at 12 years old, what a difference in your life.
Yeah, because as a middle school teacher, right? So we have shared that in common, that I was a teacher too. So I was Woodmere Middle School, taught for 5 years there before I started having my children. And, I kept thinking, all these kids, again, the struggles that they face through being an adolescent. I mean, it was just such a hard age.
Miserable.
It's hard, and I remember middle school and awkwardness and not knowing if you fit in or not feeling like you fit in, not feeling like you belong. But everybody's feeling that. And it's interesting because even throughout middle school, high school, college, your first job, and then like motherhood, and you see that. It
comes back.
It does. It keeps spiraling until we learn the lesson of self-love, right? And it's that. And if we only had the tools, which I think your program, your nonprofit, is doing a fabulous job on that, because it is all about self-love, right?
Yep.
I'm in my 50s. I mean, but it's still like, how much do you love yourself? Like, keep pouring love
It's
into
not
yourself.
a one and done.
No.
It's not a one and done, unfortunately, right?
Right.
So I often think back to, I think we might have talked about this, Louise Hay, right? And You Can Heal Your Life. And I don't know if it's that book. It's one of her books that I read early on about this, during the same time that I was training. And at the end of the book, she says, if this was taught in every school, what a different world we would live in. And that's what we do now, right?
Right.
And I always think back, if I had pitched it, when I pitched it to the school, if I had said, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to teach girls how to love themselves and how to, talk nicely to themselves. And they're going to do a race too. Right. They would have been like, nice, goodbye, lady, right? But because I said, we're going to work with, kids who don't feel that they're athletic, and we're going to give them this really big goal, and we're going to give them all the training and the tools and the support that they need to be successful for free. Yeah. They were like, bring it on, bring it on. Right. But it's sort of a bait and switch. Right. Because they don't really know. But I don't care if they ever do another race again, but what they take with them is this toolbox that, when the next year, what's incredible, right? So we do it in 6th grade for a reason, because sports don't really start in the schools until 7th grade. They can try out for teams. Right. So the kids who in a million years would not have had the confidence to try out for a team, they do, right? In the
so
7th grade, our alums, it's like 90%. They're either on the tennis team or they go into track or whatever it is. They now have the confidence, or they go into student government or the lead in the play. They just, you ask any of the schools and they'll tell you, we don't know what happened to these kids. The little one who sat in the back always, now she's, the one raising her hand and the one going studying physics in college and all of these great things. It's all about, it really is a perfect meld of overcoming fear, right? And pushing past those self-limiting doubts and fears to do something really scary and big like a triathlon, but then taking all the tools that got you to the finish line and applying them to any other goal that you set for yourself.
Right. And I've heard that you said at the end, it's just the beginning, like when they finish, right?
Right. The finish line is just the beginning.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, for some of them, crossing that line, they're good. Right, they go, they go on.
We're good.
They go on to do whatever else they're going to do, and a lot of them still keep in touch, but not all of them come back. The ones that come back, it's incredible, right? So we start in 6th grade, then in 7th and 8th, they have the opportunity to come back, but there's a new level of responsibility. And this year we actually made it into a very more organized program, right? We're calling it coach and training. So the girls who came back as 7th and 8th graders, they now have special shirts. They had to sign a contract. There'll be a certificate at the end, but their role is very different, right? They are now the leaders. They are the mentors. They're the ones that the girls come to when they're like, I don't want to swim. I have my period. Right. And they're like, oh yeah, don't worry about that. We're, I got you, right? That kind of thing. Right. And so it's so wonderful. And it's, for the most part, it's the girls who in a million years didn't think they would ever be able to do it, who didn't know how to ride a bike or who were terrified to get into the water.
Right. Or don't know how to swim. I mean, we live on Long Island, and how many kids don't know how to swim? Which is insane. Yeah. Right? But they've overcome that. And there's this feeling of, oh my God, if I can do that, I can do anything. And now I want to find somebody who's like me and show them that they can do it too. Right. And that's the thing. So now over the years, what we've done is then in 9th grade, they can now volunteer as a coach. Okay. And then when they're 16, we'll pay to train them as water safety instructors, swim instructors. Wow. So now we've got a whole cohort, right? It costs us a $500 investment, but then they do a season coaching for us for free, and then the next year they're paid just as a regular adult coach. And then we know, if you've ever paid for swim lessons for your child out here, so they're certified to do that. And so there's an income. Not lifeguards. They're not lifeguards, they're coaches.
They're swim instructors.
Instructors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some do. We will also certify them as lifeguards.
Our lifeguard program is so great.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. My kids did it.
Yeah, so
it's
both.
amazing.
But really the swim instructor. So we have alums working in the pools with the girls who don't know how to swim.
Amazing.
It's phenomenal.
It's amazing.
And they get it. It's like they just
you don't
you don't have to train them. They just know. They just know.
So it's not a one and done program. I want you to talk about what how someone would you go in 6th grade in the fall? When do you go in?
So we go in and do our recruitment in January.
Okay.
So our team will go in to each one of the middle schools. All of the girls in 6th grade are called down for an assembly. We have some of the alums talk. We show a video. We answer their questions. And at the end of that, they're each given a little slip of paper where they opt in. Basically, right? So they have to select, yes, I'd like to be a part of iTry. No, I don't think this is for me, or I'm not sure. And then we ask them why, right? So even if they say no, because sometimes the ones, there's a lot of, we try to say, don't pay attention to what your friend next to you, but they all do, right? And so what we want to make sure is that the girls who could benefit most are really given the opportunity. And so that's why we partner with the schools. And at each school, we have someone who really knows these kids.
Always.
And so even if that kid said no, that person is like calling them aside saying,
think about
you really
it.
got to think about this. Could be a great opportunity, and helping us with outreach. And we do a lot of outreach to the families, and we do a meeting and we go over everything and do registration. So that's all like in January. At the end of February, we start. And it just kind of builds up until race day,
which is June.
July.
Oh, July.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it extends into the summer 2 weeks. So it's a huge commitment. They spend over like 150 hours with us during the course of these 6 months.
That's why it works.
That's why it works. Yeah.
Because it's not a one and done.
Never. No.
And it's a constant. They're coming back to the same message, right? They're coming back to people who may be different, whether it's a kid that's a little bit older than them, or someone who's done it already, or a mentor, a teacher, whoever it is. They're getting the same message from different people, so they're hearing it multiple times,
and they feel safe.
And they feel
safe. They feel seen. They feel part of something.
Right.
For so many of them, they really have never. For some of our kids, this is the first after-school activity they've ever done.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you
economic.
Get 6th grade.
Right.
Also, yeah.
Right. But we have the whole economic thing that the Hamptons is not known for.
Correct.
Right. That there's a lot. There's a lot of haves and have-nots, and so for the haves, they've got dance class and jujitsu and drama club, whatever it is,
and club sports and this
that their
and
families, spend a fortune on.
Right.
But for some of us, that's not a possibility, and so a lot of these kids, this is the first extra thing they've ever had, and their families are like, wait a minute, it doesn't cost us anything. Wait, she doesn't have a bike. She doesn't need one. She doesn't have a swimsuit. We got her. She doesn't have a ride. We'll help you
so
arrange
the bikes and the swimsuits and all that stuff, are they donated most of the time? Is that what you're?
We fundraise in order
to buy them so that you can
So we have now a fleet of bicycles.
I was going to say I probably got one or two.
Good.
Wow. If you could give your younger self, now that you've done this and you're working with adolescents, and I have to tell you, I loved my middle school years working in middle school, and people would say to me, you really like them? And I said, I love adolescents.
You know what? I have too. When I worked in preschool, because the Hampton Day School was through 8th grade, I would look at those teachers and be like, how do you do it? Oh my God. But now what I find is what I loved about preschool was the magic. Right? You read them a story. It was fairies and princesses, and they believed it, hook, line, and sinker, right? This is the same. This is a magic period in middle school. Everything is morphing, and they are so open. So when you look at them and you say, there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. If it's in your heart, everything will be given to you. Look at this opportunity you have right now, and take it.
Right.
You can do anything. You can be anything.
It's that magical time that you believe anything is possible.
Exactly.
Somehow we get, I think, encumbered by the layers of doubt and the layers of, self-criticism and the layers of everything that maybe we do for ourselves or society does or whatever they're seeing especially on social media, right? And all those images. But really, I found it to be so magical. And of course, I taught pre-social media. So But I found that they were so capable, so willing to go there.
Yes.
If they had that person with them, seeing that they are a bright spark of,
Yes.
a bright light, a bright, a potential, they see their potential. And so I love that age, and I love that you target that age specifically because that's where I think there's a new beginning there.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like
Yes.
when they're babies, right? That's the beginning, but there's a new beginning.
Yes.
And they say that that's the second greatest growth spurt after infancy, right? The second greatest greatest growth
Their bodies,
spurt is
their
that.
brains, their everything. Yeah.
Wow. Really powerful, Theresa. And I'm like blown away by the levels of the complexity and support that you have put into this program. And the girls meet, is it once a week, like starting in February?
Yeah,
or is
twice a week.
Twice a week?
Yeah, so
it is a big
once a
commitment.
week
Yep.
after school.
Yep.
So they do 2 hours after school. The first is the empowerment piece where we do the things like the visualization and the affirmations
Right.
and a whole lesson on compliments, how to take a compliment and give
How
a compliment.
to take a compliment.
Right? It took me until I was 40 to understand that concept.
Right.
Right?
To not just blow it off. To not just
Exactly.
say, oh, no.
Accept
Or
it
make
as a
it
gift. Just say
right.
thank you.
Thank
right?
you.
So simple. But I needed to
Yes,
learn that.
we all do. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And then there's an hour of what we call fitness, right? So they get exposed to all different things. So one week might be yoga or kickboxing or Zumba. So they get to try all different modalities,
Amazing.
Because it's lifelong, right? You're not always going to be playing volleyball in gym class. There's lots of different ways to enjoy being fit. And then on Saturdays, that's when they do triathlon specific training. So we have half of them go to the Y in East Hampton, the other half at Suffolk County Community College, because we now span from Montauk to Mastic. We've
Wow.
Yeah,
You've
we work
expanded,
with,
yeah.
200 girls a season.
So right now you're working with 200 girls.
Yes.
What?
And that they do running and then swimming every Saturday until June. And then in June, we have 3 Saturdays that we do biking on the road at Cooper's in Southampton. And then we transfer, once school is over, to Long Beach in Sag Harbor, where the race is. And we do 9 on-course practices there to prepare
Are they
them for the race.
swimming in Long Beach? Is that where they
They
swim?
will be, yes. Yep. Open water,
A little-
baby.
I was going to say, yeah. It's a little bit warmer than the ocean, which is good, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
By July.
By July, it's good.
fine.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Who's been the greatest teacher in your life?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I've been very lucky to have a lot of incredible women who, some authors and some in real life, and many that are much older than I am. And so I always feel encouraged about the future. I never feel, now that, I'm now over 55, it's like, how did this happen, right? But I don't feel old. I feel invigorated, and I know that there's so much more to come. And, I think the women in my life have been my greatest teachers.
Has there been anyone in particular that you can think of, or?
Louise Hay, I would
Yes.
say, is
Right.
probably, I didn't realize what damage I was doing to myself until I really started understanding how powerful our words are.
Mm-hmm.
And that really was the biggest shift for me. Yeah.
That's great, right?
Yeah.
So she really was an amazing
yeah.
teacher, yeah.
Yeah.
And lives on. Can you share maybe an adverse childhood experience that you had that now, that at the time you looked at it as this is the worst thing in the world, but now you see it as one of your lessons or one of your greatest experiences that brought you to who you are today?
Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of loss. And so when I was 16, I was right before I was 16, right? I was planning my sweet 16 birthday. My father became ill, and he actually passed away just a few days before my 16th birthday. And I mean, it was devastating, right? But what I realized was how whenever something horrible happens, there's usually some grace around it. right? There's people around to help you as you fall. There's people there that say the right thing or just are willing to stand by your side. And that's been my truth over and over. When I was pregnant with my daughter, my mother passed away. My husband passed away a few years ago. And there's just always been so much grace. As bad as it is, there's just so much love and sometimes joy or laughter or things that you're just not alone. And so like when I think about, when your head goes to that bad place of something, somebody else or something bad happening, I have to remember that, no, there's a bigger plan. And it is true that everything's going to be okay, because it always is. And we get nervous and we get scared. But when you reflect back on those really hard times, you're like, yeah, it was okay. I was okay. I'm going to be okay. And that helps me as, to sometimes relate to the girls who are going through really, really hard and devastating times. Right. I don't know exactly how they feel, but I know that truth, right, that I can look at them and say, it's going to be okay.
How did you get to that point where you found that strength and found that insight?
Just through lived experience. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Were there other turning points that you could say, wow, I didn't realize the strength that I had?
The triathlon was a different kind of strength, right?
Right.
It was a really good combination,
right, of physical
and mental and emotional strength, mm-hmm, right? The others were more, emotional, trying to continue and get through. But yeah, I think the triathlon really showed me the power that I have to set a goal and to push past the physical limitations and the mental limitations and the emotional limitations.
Yeah.
It really was a turning point in my life.
Absolutely. And I again, I'm going to go back to like people who are stuck in their head. If you take action, I know people, someone says, I need to go for a walk, or I need to work out, or I need to do something physical, because you can't get out of your head.
Yes.
When you keep thinking about it in your head,
yes,
and you keep
there's something
I
recently heard somebody say, you got to move through. You got to move through, and it's just that. Just move. Get out of the chair that you're in and get and move. I had a friend who's like, I save so much money on therapy. My working out is my therapy, and come on, look where we live. There's so many beautiful trails, and just go to the beach and walk. I do it as much as I can, right? Yep. That grounding. And I just tell myself, just move. Right. If I can just kind of move through.
Absolutely. Because that's the key, right? That's the balance. That's the connection. And I love the fact that iTry focuses more on transformation over competition.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I just think that we need that more in life throughout. And I'm going to say mostly for women. How can we move from that mindset of competition into appreciating the transformation?
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do you see that being done? I know iTry's focus on that, but how do you do that?
I think part of us, we just do it naturally. I see it more and more, right? I always, when I'm with the girls and we're walking through doors, I always say, hold the door for the girl behind you. Hold the door for the girl behind you, right? And there's something to that, mm-hmm, right? And on a bigger scale, as we're opening doors, we need to bring the girl behind us with us, right? It's not about the competition. It's we as a society need to move from lack mindset, mm-hmm, to abundance, mm-hmm, right? There is more than enough. And I just feel so firmly, I've said it since the beginning, I'm going to cry. These kids are different. They've come at a time in this world where we need them. And it's hard right now. We all know this is not, I'm praying this is the last gasp, because what's coming after us, they're strong, they're confident. They look at the past, things like Rosa Parks at the back of the bus saying, what? Gay marriage, what?
Right.
It just doesn't compute. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So we need to just support and love them and reaffirm, you're right. and hold the door.
Right.
Hold the door for them because they get it.
Right.
They get it. They're going to, I always say, I'm not worried about our future because I see it. I see who you are in your hearts and your souls, and go do that.
Well, they are. They're far more advanced, right? I say
Indeed.
from 2000, around the 2000,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
2000 babies onward, and I just think that there's an intuitive knowing, there's a common sense, well, not always, but they have to figure that out. But there is this and belief of what they're capable of,
Yes.
and as long as you don't block them, as long as you don't hinder that, as long as you don't squash that,
Yep.
I feel that they are such a gift to us, and they're teaching us so much if we allow it.
Exactly.
Right? If we allow it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in talking about the mental wellness of kids, and we talked about in other episodes, we've spoken about COVID and the impact that had on working in the schools. I saw it firsthand and having kids and all that stuff. What do you think, was there a silver lining in all of it, or was there something that you saw that changed
Yeah. I mean,
during that time, and then now, and then how did we, now 5 years later, how did we evolve?
During COVID, we quickly went virtual, right? And we realized it was the first couple weeks, everybody was showing up. They had their cameras on Zoom, and it was fun. And we saw their backgrounds and their parents working out with them in the background. And as the weeks progressed, they started shutting their cameras off. And if you were a teacher during that time, you know how hard that was to have the energy.
Yes.
We would have a few, our alums were there, and that they would give us some sort of feedback. But internally, we would say to each other, but they're showing up. They're showing up. So we're going to keep showing up. And we could sense the dip in their mental health. And if you remember, the governor kept saying it was in 2-week increments at first,
Yes.
right? Okay, we're going to close it for 2 weeks, and then we're going to see.
Yeah.
So this
Forgot
was
about that.
this was the third 2-week thing, and one of our alums, she had something hanging in right behind her on the screen, and I remember saying to her, "Hey, what is that?" And she goes, "Oh, it's my back to school outfit, because the governor's going to tell us that we can go back to school Monday." That was on a Friday, and we all go, "Oh, okay." We knew it wasn't going to happen. Well, that afternoon, the governor said schools will remain closed for the rest of the school year. That afternoon, I received 4 frantic phone calls from moms sure that their daughters were going to take their lives. That's how quickly and how dramatically it all fell apart. And we went into action. We had them into Family Service League immediately, and we just kept saying, just show up. We're going to be here. We're going to do it. We were delivering food to their homes, and we had Zoom meetings just for parents, just so I could sit there with them and say, it's okay, you're going to be okay. Right. This is hard. You're doing the best you can. Right. They appreciated that so much. I mean, so it was an incredible time. What, for us, the best thing that came out of it was we knew going back into the schools that we needed to be prepared for the mental health crisis that we knew was coming and we were seeing in real time. And so we partnered with an organization called the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport, who are incredible. And they came here and did a tailor-made training for our entire organization, board, staff, program, coaches, everybody. And it's all based in brain science. And so it's resiliency training. And really, honestly, what it did for us is made us able to quantify what we already do and why it's so helpful in meeting each one of these kids where they're at. And that, to us, gave us the permission to really go above and beyond where we've ever gone before and truly tailor make this program for each kid. And so in the years that have progressed with us doing this, we've been able to better serve kids on the autism spectrum and kids with physical disabilities. And it's just opened up a whole new range for what we're able to do because it's about that one soul. It's always, for me, it's always been about that one kid. Right. But now I have this incredible staff who are so able to do that.
That's amazing. And that organization is a national organization?
Yes, yes. They train coaches all over the country.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Amazing. And I remember, being on the school board in Southampton, and it was just like the mental health piece. We were just looking for any support.
Yeah.
Everybody, all hands on deck, and it was just so overwhelming. So to hear you say about
the other positive is it's the stigma has really lessened, right? Where kids who were having mental health challenges, they didn't have the words to describe it, or they were shunned, or even parents were like, "Oh no, that." It's really brought it out where nobody's ashamed to say, "I need some help. I'm really struggling."
Right.
So I think that's probably
huge
one of the
too.
biggest keys.
Yeah. Because really, they are okay saying, "I'm having a panic attack," or "I'm just not feeling something's wrong. Something's wrong. I need help."
Yeah.
And there is more of that. Wow. How do you define, if you do at all, spirituality with the girls, like as they move through the program? Is it mind, body, and soul? Are those the words that you use?
I don't usually use the word soul.
Okay. Because there is a spiritual component to this, and I know you, so I know that there is. I'm just wondering, how do you bring that up with the program, within the program?
Right. We more use energy, right? And light. So the very first lesson, the very first empowerment lesson that every single group does is called How Bright Is Your Light? And we actually bring in a battery-operated lantern that can go brighter or dimmer. And we explain that each one of us comes into this world as this beautiful ball of light. And when you're a baby, your light is just so bright and you're so happy. And when people see a happy baby, how does that make you feel? It makes you feel so good and so also bright inside. And then, as you grow, you go to the playground and you start to compare yourself, or somebody calls you a name and your light goes a little bit dimmer. And then you go to school and it's difficult, and all of these things throughout your life, and your light tends to go dim. Yeah. And two things, we always say your light never goes out. It can get brighter, it can get dimmer, but you have a job. And your one job in iTry is to try and keep your light as bright as you can, because it not only makes you feel good, but it can affect everyone around you. And so we brainstorm, and they use the lantern, right? And they come up and they say, all right, my light is really bright when I dance in my room, or when I go get Buddha berry with my best friend, or whatever it is, and my light's really dim when my cat died, or so it really sets the stage of what happens in iTry stays in iTry. This is a safe space that you can share and be seen and heard, right? And then from there we use this thing. We've now developed Fist to 5. So how bright is your light? If you're having a really bad day, maybe your light is at a 0 fist, right? And maybe all of a sudden, something great happens and you're at a 4 or a 5. So that is pretty much, we continue that throughout the course of the season and always return to that. Mm-hmm. When I do my lesson, which I explained to you the other day, and I'm going to do it today in Hampton Bays, and I use divining rods to demonstrate their energy, and I'm able to measure their energy fields with these rods. And so they get to see in real time what the light looks like and how it can go up and down depending on your own words and actions.
And what do they think about that?
They are amazed. First of all, none of them question that it's real. Like I know it's real, but if I was watching it as an adult, I'd be like, she's making this up. And they're all like, it's that magic, right? And it's
magic,
just,
but it's real.
It is real.
Yeah.
It is. And they understand it. They see it in real time. They're just, I really do think it has an impact on the way they talk to themselves and the way they talk to others, because they've seen how energy. Dramatic your energy can shift.
Yeah. So that's really, those are two powerful examples of really bringing that, again, that awareness that I think sometimes gets stifled.
Exactly.
Right? What role does failure play in this? And how do you handle, or your mentors and your coaches, how are they handling setbacks? Because obviously there are some setbacks for certain girls that participate. How is that handled?
Yeah, that's. I mean, our coaches and our program team are phenomenal, but I think that's where having the alums really comes into play, and we're seeing it now, right, as we transition into biking, because over the years, the number of kids who do not know how to ride a bike at 12 years old is increasing, right? And it's a hard thing. And usually they've tried.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Kids don't know how to ride bikes nowadays more than they did even 10 years ago.
Yeah. Two big reasons. One is parents think it's unsafe, which when done right, I firmly believe it can be done safely. I don't ever want to see a kid not have that experience because of the fear of unsafe, but I do understand it. And then two, the price of bicycles. That's another thing that happened in COVID. They went through the roof.
Oh, that's right.
So those two things combined, we've really seen a dip. And a lot of times it's a kid who's tried before and failed, and they just give up. Mm-hmm. So they come to us, and we're like, oh, this is what we live for.
Right.
We know how to do this, right? And now it's not just us, but we have that girl who last year couldn't ride a bike, and she's the best. And she's like, oh, I was just like you. Come on, you're gonna do it. I know you're gonna do it. And we that alone, when they're frustrated, they have that older girl saying, I know exactly, and I fell, and here's my scar, and the whole thing, and it really, so failure is just limited. We also have become, as I said, as we modify for each kid, that kid may only learned how to ride a bike, 3 days before the race. They'll stay in the parking lot. It's still a win. Right. They still cross that finish line like everybody else. And so it's managing expectations, changing goals and things like that, so that every kid is successful, because that's what it's about.
That's amazing when you talk about riding bikes, right? It was all we did when we were younger, and now it's. And I remember there was someone out here at the local bike shop that used to teach kids how to ride bikes, because they were city kids, and they really didn't. A lot of the ones that would come out for the season weren't riding around the neighborhood, right? Because they were in the city, and it is dangerous. If you right. Even here it could be dangerous on Montauk Highway riding a bike. I've had friends, even the back roads, because people are distracted and not right. Yeah, right. So there is that element of danger.
But I always say, at the end of every season, we've got 200 very competent cyclists out there, and nothing's going to make you stop and realize what's important. Like, get off my phone if I'm passing by 200 kids on bikes, right? It's like, I always say, because they're nervous. We're in the bike lane at Long Beach, and there's trucks going by and the whole thing, and I'm always like, they don't want to hurt you.
Right.
Nobody wants to hurt. That's going to ruin their day.
Right.
If they hurt a kid. Right. Some of them, I have to be like, are you kidding me, dude?
Right.
Slow down. Right. But at the end of the day, I do this whole pink bubble thing with them, and we stay, safe in our bubbles and all of that. And it's
that mindset, right?
Exactly.
It's that
I am safe. I am safe.
Right, because that's where it starts. Because if you feel safe, then the chances are you're going to be safe, right?
Yep.
And what's really interesting is I'm thinking about, the bicyclists out here. Overall, the cyclists out here know which direction to go in. But I'm thinking about,
you think?
They know that they have to go with traffic, and then the people that are walking should be going against traffic, and I just don't.
They don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know.
I see people walk, and there's been
accidents. Have you seen our signs, though? We have a couple in Springs.
Oh, okay.
But we now. The Shinnecock Nation with the billboards coming in and out, for the last 3 years, we have billboards that have road safety, and it's pictures of the girls, and one is on the bike, and it says ride with traffic, and then run and walk again. Yes.
Thank you, Theresa. Because people
don't know. It makes me crazy. And then if I stop somebody, I feel like a Karen.
Yes.
But I had some guy yell at me, and I'm like, he goes, "You're wrong." He was running with headphones with traffic. And I was like, tried to explain he yelled at me, and he's like, "You're wrong." I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you, but guess what? You get hit.
Right.
Insurance isn't going to cover you because you're breaking the law right now.
Oh,
you have
true?
Yeah, it happened to a friend of mine.
It happened to a mother with a child actually in Amagansett a couple years back, and she was walking home from school with her kids, and she was hit by a car. Again, I don't know, distracted driver or not. I don't know what the outcome was.
Yeah, you have to be able to see what's coming.
Yes, please learn, people in the Hamptons. Please learn how to walk, especially with the traffic and the season. When you're walking or running, you should be against traffic. So thank you for putting up those signs, Miss Theresa.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. It's one of my pet peeves.
Oh, me too.
Because it's just such a simple thing, and I don't think people are paying attention. And if you're not paying attention and the drivers are not paying attention, that's when the problems start. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. In today's high, fast-paced, world, how do you teach the girls to keep connecting with their true self and stay connected to that?
The word connected is really important. I think back to the mental health for a second. When you talk, I think it's people in general, but especially adolescents, when you talk to them about what they want to be connected, right, to each other. Mm-hmm. And we all think they are on their phones, but they're not.
No.
And so I think one of the greatest things that we provide is this time that they cannot be on their phone, and they are sort of forced to be connected. And so, like in the summer, when they're on the bus, it's that time, unstructured time, where they can just be kids and just be together, right? I think the interconnectedness comes as well because a lot of what they do when you're swimming, it's just you and the voice in your head, right? And so that's where those affirmations come in, and it's whatever it's going to be. We use a lot of Dory, right? Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Dory, I can do this. Yeah. So I think just kind of the lessons that we teach kind of all build on one another to keep them connected to each other and connected to themselves and to their families. This I love is that so many of them take what they're learning in iTry and go home and teach it, especially to their moms. We've seen that over and over again. I mean, just these situations where the child is learning, Mom, it doesn't have to be like that. Look, this is what I learned in iTry. Why don't we do that together? Stand at the mirror with me. I love you. Can you do that with me, Mom? And it's these moms are just, their lives are transformed through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Where was this program when I was younger, right? How has your lens changed through your work? Like from where it started to where it is now?
I always say I crossed that finish line transformed. And I knew without a doubt that I would never go back to that girl, that woman, that mom who continuously berated herself. And as much as that's true, as I said before, it's not a one and done. And so it's a constant challenge. It's a constant reminder. And when I used to do the program, when I was, it was pretty much just me going to all the schools and doing everything, I always said I was never better than from February to July, because I didn't just have to talk the talk. I was walking the walk, and I was remembering, like, why don't I do that every day, right? And so it's remembering to do these things every day. And I just think life is like a spiral staircase, right? And you never go straight up and are done. Things keep coming around, and you have to face them again and again and again. And so I'm very lucky that when they do come again, that I can say, okay, I'm going to use what I teach the girls, because if I'm going to stand in front of them and say, believe me, I know this works, then it's got to work for me too. Right. And it's putting the work in, but also having the faith and the belief. And the miracles that I've experienced through this work are just incredible. And that's sort of what it is for me, is even when things look dire and, I'm like, I don't know how it's going to work out, I have to believe what I teach the girls. Right. It's all going to be okay.
Right. And when things show up and re-show up and, reappear and reappear.
There's a reason.
There is a reason, right? I believe
Yep.
it's source just checking in. Do you
Yep.
still have that,
Yep.
Is that still something that triggers you? Let's work on that.
Yep.
Or let's work through that.
Yep.
And it's not I haven't, figured that out yet, or it's not a time to bash, but it's a time
Right.
to recognize how you face that or how you approach that differently every time, and you
Right.
grow, right? Like you
Right.
said, it's just
Right.
part of the evolution of our souls and the evolution of our humanity and the evolution of our bodies and the evolution of everything, right?
Yep.
Of the whole
because
package.
and it's what you say, right? So I'll say everything happens for a reason. So when
Right.
something happens, I tell this story a lot. Is when I started, my husband and I had a magazine, and magazines were going the way of the dinosaurs, right? It's a very expensive proposition, and it was giving us a great lifestyle, but not a lot of income. And there were times where it was really pretty scary. And one of those times was it was winter. It was probably the first or second year of iTry, and I woke up early in the morning and my nose was frozen, and I realized we had run out of oil. There was no heat in the house. And I remember laying there and saying, okay, all right, I'm going to walk the walk. I'm going to be grateful, because I always say, in the worst moment, if you can find one thing to be grateful for, you go from fear and despair all the way almost to the top, right? The top is love and all of that. Well, gratitude's right here.
Right.
And so I laid there and I said, okay, I'm warm. I got my blanket on. My husband's here. He's okay. My daughter's in her room. She's fine. I'm going to get her breakfast, get her to school, and somehow this is all going to work out. And I just laid there feeling grateful. Well, by that afternoon, there was a check in the mailbox from an overpayment in insurance or something, and we were able to fill up that tank. And it was just like what could have been like such a moment of absolute despair. I was able to turn around. And when I tell that story sometimes to some of the kids who have probably been in similar situations,
Yes.
their eyes go wide. They can't, who is this white woman who, runs this organization?
She's a teacher. Right.
Everything
She
must be
doesn't-
great for her.
right,
And
right.
and they're like,
Perception.
oh wow, that happened to you too. And that's the thing. That's walking the walk, talking the talk, and putting it into action. And it's daily.
Yeah,
It's daily.
Yeah. And the authenticity that you're sharing and the connections that you're making with these girls is just, it's life changing.
Yeah.
Just know that. I mean, you know that as a teacher, right?
Right.
I mean, we know that
Yeah.
when kids, you don't even know half the things that
No.
you've said that inspired the growth or the lesson or something that they remembered from years ago. But same thing. I mean, you're teaching, obviously, that
Yep.
you're teaching. And you're being such an amazing role model. And to be that open and honest and raw just proves the bigger the connections you could make, because you just never know.
Yeah.
Like we said, people don't have the understanding of what's going on out here or throughout, especially there's such a difference in, who's out here. There's such a huge scale of like haves and have-nots, and it becomes really important to understand that the stories and the lives that these kids are living and the experiences that they're living sometimes are just devastating.
Yeah.
Right. And you're sort of offering your hand and saying, I can help you, and just let's do this together. And then you have all this wonderful support from wonderful girls who've experienced it firsthand. And again, someone had told me, like, nobody leaves this earth unscathed.
Right.
And it's
true.
true that it's just such an interesting experience, and everybody's journey looks different. Everybody's experience looks different, and it's the bottom line is we have each other, and if we can build those relationships and those connections, then it makes it that much more beautiful.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
able to
We used to read a book. We haven't done this in a while, but there's one of my favorite books is by Neil Donald Walsh, The Little Soul in the Sun. Do you know it?
No, I don't know it.
I'm going to get you a copy.
Okay.
But it's the one book. It's a children's book, but I think it's more of an adult book, and it really answered for me the question, why do bad things happen to good people? Right? That thing we struggle, like, why me and all of this.
Right.
But it's basically the story of how we choose a lot of our path, right? We do a life plan before we get here, and we choose our parents, and we choose the people that are going to be there for us in the hard times. And in this particular story, one of the little souls, God asks him, what do you want to go down to earth to learn? And he chooses forgiveness. And God says, well, who are you going to forgive? Look around. And he looks, and it's all these beautiful souls, the light. Each one of them is a light. And the little soul gets upset, and he's like, oh, man. And this other soul steps forward and says, don't worry, I'll help you. And he says, well, how are you going to help me? And he says, well, when we go to earth, I'm going to make my light very dim, and I'm going to do something that you're going to have to forgive. And man, does that change my whole outlook on everything, right? That person who hurt you, maybe they were hurting you so that you would have the opportunity to forgive.
Right. And you would learn that lesson, so it's really a blessing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's a big one. So
it's a big one. What's next for I Try?
Oh gosh. So some big things are in the works. When I talk about miracles, it's really interesting how pieces are falling into place. And so I've had a vision of I Tribe going into the 5 boroughs for many years. And I was always looking, where can we do a race? Because you have to have this finish line moment. And
that's right.
Where in New York City are we going to find?
Right.
Where's the water? Where's the safety?
Right.
So I was asking people every conference I went to with triathletes, and so the same place kept coming up, Orchard Beach in the Bronx. So last February, not this past February, the February before, I met a friend there, and there was snow on the ground, and we drove up, and it was perfect. You know how Long Beach is in Sag Harbor? Well, this is that on steroids. It's just this beautiful crescent sand beach where they can still put their feet down and swim, parking lots for days, a great place to run. The bike is going to be the challenge, but I think we're working on it. And he looked at me and I said, this is it. This is perfect, right? If I could love it in the snow, I'm like, this is perfect. And he looked at me and he goes, it is, but Theresa, it's going to take a miracle to get New York City parks to say yes. And I looked at him and I said, well, I know about miracles. I can do this. And I can't tell you the pieces that have just been falling into place. And I finally just got a call with 4 women from New York City parks who by the end of the call were like, okay, we'll work with you. I mean, they were basically crying, saying, all right, we're going to make this happen. And so the dream is for 2026 to have a pilot program of I Try in the Bronx with a race in September. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're providing the program that every woman would have loved to have had in adolescence. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. I wish you so much success with that. I want to end with the truest, most beautiful story about your life that you want to share.
Gosh, that's a challenge. The truest, most beautiful story about my life.
Yeah.
I think, the theme has been that just trust. Just trust that things are going to work out. Because when my husband got sick, it went really, really fast. But there was this feeling and this knowing that I had that was part of our plan, that we had planned this. And one of the things he said to me when he was, pretty sick before he passed was, I always knew you'd have a second part of your life without me. And I want this second part to be incredible. And it's now going on 6 years. Some of it has been great, some of it not so great. Certainly not incredible yet.
Right.
But I still have the faith and the trust that it will be and that everything works out.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
story.
you.
Thank you so much. And much success with everything. And here's to an incredible life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Oh, this was wonderful, Anastasia.
Thanks.